Hey guys, this is Techo Freak here, and welcome to episode 21 of my custom story creation tutorial for Amnesia Rebirth. And today we're going to be talking about the basics of fear. So we're going to talk about we're pretty much going to talk about, it's pretty much an introduction to fear, just kind of the very basic uses for it. There's a lot when it comes to fear. And I just kind of want to do this first episode. This will probably be like a part one. But it's going to be it's going to be a very basic introduction to fear, just kind of getting you started going with fear, and then from there you can start moving on to more complicated fear topics. We could start talking about some other ones later in a future episode. But for now, again, it's just going to be the what I would consider the basics. But yeah, and just want to apologize. I didn't get a video up last week Friday. I had actually already recorded the video, but there was actually a problem with the recording, and I was going away for the weekend, so I didn't have a chance to re-record that before to upload it. So I'm re-recording this, and this is gonna be going up probably on Monday. I'll see if I can get an extra video out this week just to make up for missing that one last week. But with that, let's go ahead and get started. So this is my plan for what I want to do in today's episode. So what I want to do is I want to talk about fear areas, fear rates, and scary objects. So what I'm thinking is we're going to talk about all of those, and we're slowly going to build our way up to talking about the scary object. And what I think I'll do is I'll put a corpse here in the corner, and then once we put the scary guy there in the corner, the corpse in the corner, I want to make it the scary object. So when the player gets down to these steps here and crosses like a plane here, I want them to start getting afraid of the body and react to the dead body. So I think the first thing we should do is probably get a dead body put in this corner. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and go to entities here, and I'm going to type in LQ_C for corpse track. This is going to be the body I use. Of course, if you want to use something else, just pick whatever scary object you want your object to be. Go ahead and pick it. I'm going to do a corpse, but you can do whatever you want, of course. And I'm going to go ahead and place them down. And I'm actually going to pose this corpse. You can actually pose the corpse. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to lay him flat on his stomach here, just because he's going to be like kind of lying on the floor, sprung out pretty much. And let's go ahead and move him into this corner here. Maybe move him a little further back. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. And then what we'll do is we will make him a static object, because there is an animation that is played by the corpse. So I want to make it a static object so that they can be interacted with. And then we'll go ahead and pose him. And then now we can actually move every single part of his body around and pose him however we want. So I think first thing I want to do is bring his arm like in here to his like body here, so this looks more natural. So you want to find the left upper arm here, and I'm going to set rotate here, and then I'm going to turn off grid controls too, just to make it easier to control it. And then let's just bring his arm kind of in like this, and then we'll grab his opposite arm, his right upper arm here, and we're gonna bring his arm here. And I think his arm's like in the ground too, so I might have placed an object. No, I didn't. So let me grab his other arm here, left upper arm. Let's bring him up a bit here, just so he's up a little bit. Maybe lower him a little bit here. And we could also move his left hand here, just kind of rotate it a different direction that we want it to go, something like this. Yeah, like that. And let's move his upper arm again here, and like bring it down here like this, maybe until his thumb comes in contact here. I would probably flatten his arm more, but just for the sake of time, I'm not going to worry too much about it. Let's position his right arm a little better. I want to move his hand here and kind of rotate it this way. Yeah, this way I think is good. Maybe we'll bring it up like this, and then we'll rotate his hand to kind of come like this, and then we'll bring his whole arm down, so he's kind of like, he's kind of laying down on his stomach. And then what I think I'm gonna do is I'm also bring his leg closer to his other leg. So then we'll do we'll find his hip here, his left hip, I think. Left hip here, I think is this one here. Yeah, and then we'll bring his legs together. So it looks like he's kind of like laid out. And again, I would normally probably like bend this arm here, but I don't think it's the biggest deal. Let's also just grab him and lift him up a tad bit here, just because he's a little bit on the ground here. Oh, I forgot to actually save the pose before I move his whole body. So I should probably save the pose. So let me yeah, let's just make this a little bit more basic here. We'll just grab both his arms here. So we'll do right upper arm, and we'll bring it this way. But you guys get the concept pretty much. Just mess around with it however you want. Left upper arm here, and let's kind of bring him like this. And we'll do the same thing again with his leg. We'll just bring his legs together here, and then yeah, before with that, we make sure you hit save, and I'll save the pose. And now you can move the whole body together so that we can now move it like this. So I'll do it like that. And yeah, it looks kind of unnatural, but it'll do fine. I'm not trying to waste too much time working with this corpse. So let's just get some blood on him there too, just so it looks a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the Kales here, and I'm going to go ahead, you can hit the dots, and just so for those that don't know where to find these, you go under textures, decals, and then you go under organic, and then you can select whichever blood texture you want. I'm just going to do blood pool here, and I'm just going to put a little bit of blood around the area here, and just put another pool right here, and maybe another one right there, and I think that's good. Maybe another one of these right here. So there he goes. He's laid out. He's got blood all over him. Probably lower some of those textures, but for now that's fine. So now let's talk about the actual topic today, fear. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and go into areas here, and what we're going to do is we're going to select fear, just fear. We're not going to be talking about fear threat today, just fear scary object, and fear rate today. So we're going to do fear, and we're going to place it. Let me get my grid controls on. I accidentally placed an area here, so let's undo that. Let's get my grid controls on here. We'll place it in the center here, and yeah, we'll place it in the center here, and we'll just click it and expand it to be the size we want. So let's go ahead and expand this guy here, and then we'll expand it the opposite way. Let me just move it out to make sure we kind of got what we're looking for here. So yeah, that looks fine. Let's go ahead and stretch it out the opposite way now here. And it's okay if it goes out a little bit. The player can't get over there anyways. Yeah, it looks fine to me. And it starts right there. Yep, that's good. That's good to me. Player's not gonna go that high, but we can extend it a little higher and then just drag it up here. And yeah, maybe a little lower here. All right, so we got the fear area here. So so pretty much we'll talk about these settings coming back, but a fear area, when the player is inside this area, he will receive a fear rate of 0.4. If you toggle on some of these settings, you can actually turn it into the opposite of a fear area. So if you wanted to make it like a safe area, you can toggle on safe and then toggle on no fear, so the player can feel no fear when he's in the area, and safe makes it so that you recover. You can recover from fear if you have fear applied. So again, you can hover over these settings to read them to see what they do specifically. I'm going to be talking about a few of these specific options here. So I'm going to leave it at that, but we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about this in a moment. What I want to do now is I want to put a fear rate area. So we're going to go ahead and go to areas again, and we're going to do fear rate area. And so a fear rate area can set the player's fear up to a certain value when he enters the area. So to do that, let's just put it down first. And what I want to do, I'm going to do a bit of a, I guess you could call this the lazy way of applying fear here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little box here around the corpse. And what this will do, it will increase the player's fear when he enters this area. And this can be inside of a fear area, although it's not required. when the player walks down these steps and enters this area here, he will get added fear rate. So the fear rate this one is set to is 0.2. So since by default the fear area here applies 0.4, we want to make it higher when he gets close to this body. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna change this and we're gonna do 0.9. And so what we expect here is when the player steps in this area, his fear rate when he enters the fear rate area here should be 0.4. So as soon as he crosses this border, it should be 0.4. And when he enters this fear rate area, it should be 0.9 because that's what we set it here. And you can increase how quickly his fear rate increases and decreases by changing these. By setting these to -1, it will use the global defaults. So it will just use the default values. If you change the priority here, if you have multiple fear areas that overlap, the priority will determine which one takes effect. If there is a tie for priority, it will just choose the one with the highest priority. And yeah, so with this, without putting any code or doing anything, this is pretty much ready to test. Again, he'll enter here 0.4 fear rate. When he enters here, he's going to have a 0.9. But we actually won't get to 0.9, and I'll explain that once we finish testing. Once we finish testing it. So let's go ahead and launch up our game, and then check what happens when we do enter the area. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so here we are in our level now. So let's go ahead and go over to our area over here. So once we get over here, we're gonna cross this barrier, and what we should get an added fear rate of 0.4. So fear rate, you can see it right here, fear rate. So of course we have 0 right now because we have nothing affecting us. So we're gonna go ahead and walk down these steps here, and once we walk down these steps here, we're gonna start getting fear rate. So let's go ahead and cross. So like I said, we should get a fear rate of 0.4 in this fear area. You can see our camera is pulsating a bit and our fear level is going up. So now we're gonna go ahead and walk near this body. Remember, we have the fear rate area around here. So when we step in there, our fear rate should shoot up to 0.9 supposedly, but there's something we need to talk about first. So let's go ahead and walk in here, and our fear rate went up, but it went up to 0.8 instead of 0.9. And when we get back to level editor, I'll explain it, but it went up to 0.8. So now we're going to start getting our fear level up much faster because we're near. And we step out of it, of course, our fear rate should start to drop. And we stepped out, and you can see it drops back to 0.4. And of course, if we leave the fear area, our fear rate will drop down to 0. So good way to add fear when there's like certain points in your game where you want the player to be scared. Like maybe there's a whole bunch of dead bodies in the room or something, or if he gets near a body, you want to just up his fear rate. Very acceptable to use that. So let's go ahead and go back to the level editor, and I'll explain why we only had 0.8 here. So let's go ahead and go back. Alright, so here we are back in our level editor. As you saw, we only got to 0.8 instead of 0.9 as we specified. There's actually a specific reason for that. So if we click on the fear area here, if you look down here, there's a value called non-agent rate cap. And what this does, it caps the max amount of fear the player can experience inside of this fear area. So it was set to 0.8, which means that despite the fear rate being 0.9, since it was within this area, it was capped to the cap here. So if you didn't want if you wanted a higher cap, or you want there to be a hard cap, you can change that here. 0.8 is the default, but of course you can change this to like 1, and that way the player can experience the max fear rate, which is 1. So you can play around with that. We're gonna leave it at 0.8, which is the default. But yeah. So with that, let's start talking about the next thing. We are gonna talk about I believe 2 functions today. Very basic ones, but very much used by the developers. So it's very important to show you guys these next ones. So what I'm going to do now, again, this is a perfectly reasonable way to apply extra fear when the player enters the area. But we're going to get a bit more creative with the way we do it, a bit more. A bit better than just this fear rate area. So we're gonna go ahead and delete this. We won't need it for now, but of course you guys can choose to play with that whenever you want. So what I'm gonna do now is we're gonna put a trigger area like at the bottom of the steps here, and what will happen is when the player enters there, he's gonna get a bunch of fear applied for a certain amount of time. This is a bit more of a demo than something I'm gonna keep in the level, but a very important one to show you. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So let's put down the trigger area first. So we're gonna go ahead and click on areas here, and then we're gonna go ahead and find trigger at the top here. So trigger, and let's go ahead and drop a trigger right here. So I think I'm gonna do something like this, and we'll make it like a plane that the player has to cross. Probably this should be high enough. We could make it wider too in case the player tries to jump this way, but of course this is just for testing, so this is fine enough for testing. So let's go ahead and click here, and what we're gonna do a player callback here. So when the player enters this area here, we want something to happen. So we're gonna go ahead and type in here player. That's what's gonna be colliding with this trigger area. And then let's give it a name. We haven't given a name yet. Let's just call it stair. We're gonna say stair trigger _1. So in case we get more triggers, we can put them down further. So stair trigger 1. And then we'll go ahead and put the name of the function we want to call from our script. So the format again is gonna be on collide _player _ and it's going to be the name of the trigger area. So it's going to be stair and then trigger and then _1, stair trigger 1. So now we have that in there. We're going to go ahead and hit copy right here, and let's go ahead and go to our CodeLight application, and let's go ahead and paste it here. So it's going to be another function. So let's just scroll down to the list of, from all our functions and paste it down at the bottom. So we'll paste it right here. And let's kind of clean up the code here. So I'm going to bring this back here, and then we'll just tab this, and we'll tab this. Now we need to specify the state. So what we're going to do is we're going to do if all state, and then we'll say equals 1. So if all state is equal to 1, that means that the player entered the area. And then here, if the state is anything else, meaning if it's 0, it means if it's 0, it's gonna be the it's gonna mean that the player left the area, but the player has to enter the area before he leaves. So we're gonna just run whatever is gonna happen when the player enters the area here, because this will never be reached, because we're gonna only run this once. So again, we did talk about this in I believe episode 5, the basics of scripting. Where we talked about the collide areas, and we have one right here too. You can see that's pretty much the format we have here. Again, let's go ahead and come back here. So at the bottom of this, we're going to return false. So let's just put it in there. Returning false pretty much tells the game that we only want to run this once. And same thing here, we're going to put return false. Not really necessary again, because we probably won't ever run this code because we're going to be returning false here to begin with. But we're going to put our code right here. So with that, now we can go ahead and do what we want to do here. So what we want to do here is we're gonna add a fear rate to the player for a set amount of time. So for that, we're gonna type in fear. And before I show you which command it is, I just want to show you how many fear functions there are. I'm just gonna hold down the down key here, and you can just see all these functions. It was pretty laggy. Just going down, but there's just an insane number of fear related functions here. So going over all these functions would make this have like a ton of parts, similar to the Ghoul episodes that had a whole bunch of parts. But that was more important. Fear, I feel, is less important and doesn't deserve as many episodes. So we're only gonna do maybe a few episodes on this, but for now we're only gonna do the intro. But the function we're gonna be using is fear handler _set, and it's going to be forced add fear rate. And there's two kinds here. There's one that has a forced fear rate, and another one that has no forced fear rate here. So we're not going to use the one with the E fear force rate type. We're just going to do the one without it, and we're going to go ahead and hit enter here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we'll hit down here just so we can get the next option here. And then we're going to go ahead and put the amount of fear rate we want to add to the current fear rate. So again, this function only works when you're inside of a fear rate area. If you're not inside of a fear rate area, this will not do anything. This is going to add fear to the player on top of whatever is already being given to the player. So we should have 0.4. So let's go ahead and add 0.3F. Or you know what? Let's add let's add 0.3F. So we'll add 3 fear to the player. So it will go from having 4 to adding 3 to that. So it will go to 7. So we'll go to 0.7. So we'll put comma and we'll space. Now we can specify how long we want to apply that fear rate. Let's just say 10.0F. So we'll apply it for 10 seconds. And then this one is whether or not you want the main character Tassie to gasp. If you have a fear factor of 0.4 or higher, that's the only time it will activate. But the player should the player should react according to how much fear they've already acquired from previous things. So we're gonna go ahead and just say true here so that the player can gasp if that happens. Although I don't think we're gonna have that happen in ours. Then this is gonna be how quickly the fear rate increases once this effect is triggered. -1 is gonna use the defaults. If you want it to increase really quickly, you can change it to something else. I'm going to set this to -1.0F as well, which is defaults. Note if there is an equal here, equals, and then a value here, you don't actually need to specify it. So in reality, the only one that was required was the first one. So we could have just put 0.3F and that's it, closed out the function, and we're done. But we're going to walk through every single one just so you know what they all do. Next, we'll do comma, space, and we're going to put -1.0F as well, just to use the defaults. But of course, you can mess around with that however you want. And we'll do comma, space. And now this, you can specify a delay and specify how long it will take before this command actually runs, this function actually runs. So if you want it to happen a second after this runs, then you can do that. We're just going to do 0.0F just to make it run immediately. And then let's close out the whole thing with a semicolon at the end. So again, none of this is really necessary since they all have default values, but we did specify them just so I can show you guys how that works. So now we can go ahead and save that. And now with that, when the player enters this area here, we're going to execute this function right here, which when the player enters that area, we're going to go ahead and add a fear rate, and we're going to add 0.3 fear rate once he crosses the bottom of those steps there. And then this will only be applied once, so it will return false after that. So with that, we can go ahead and run our game and check it out. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so here we are in our level. So let's go ahead and go over to our fear rate area over here. So again, when we cross this barrier here, we should get additional fear applied to us, and Tassie should respond to it. She might gasp, or she might there'll be some extra effect. So first, let's go ahead and step in here, and we're gonna go ahead and hit 0.40 here. Remember, we're looking at the fear rate here, and then when we cross this, we should get an additional 0.3 applied. So let's go ahead and walk through, and there you go. We got the additional 0.3 applied. And now our camera's shaking even more now. And this should only last, of course, we set 10 seconds. So it should only last 10 seconds. And it'll go ahead and go back down. So with that, you can pretty much apply any amount of extra fear when the player is in an area. So another useful way to control the player's fear and have more spooky things happen. This is probably the most used fear function by the developers, so it's a very good one to know, and that's why I wanted to show it off today. Although I don't think we'll be keeping it in this spot, it was mainly for demonstration today. So let's go ahead and hit exit here and go back to our level editor. Alright, so here we are back in our level editor now. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about the scary object. So what we're going to do is make it so that when the player gets within a certain radius of this body and looks at the body, his fear will start increasing. So the way I want to accomplish this, what I want to do is I want to set this fear area here to be disabled. So I'm going to set it to no fear here. So I don't want it to get any fear until I tell it to, okay? Again, the scary object thing is only going to work within a fear area, so pretty much most of your things have to be contained within this fear area. Just so you guys are aware. But I don't want to activate the fear area right off the bat. I want to activate it when something happens. And what I want that to be is when the player crosses this plane. So we're going to reuse this collide area we have here. When the player enters this collide area here, I want to enable this fear area, which will then enable the scary object that the player is going to be reacting to over here. So first, we're going to set it to no fear. So when the player starts going down the steps, he's not going to have any fear. Then when he crosses this plane, we're going to enable it. So let's go ahead and go to our code light here, our code light application. We're going to go ahead and put 2 slashes before this fear handler command here. This is going to go ahead and disable this line from running. And then we'll go ahead and go to a new line here. And what we're going to do, pretty simple command. We're going to say fear rate area. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do set, we're going to do, or not fear rate area. We're going to do fear area. And then we're going to do set gives fear. So it's going to be set gives fear. So it's going to be the first one here. So we got to put in the name of that fear area. So I believe it is called fear_1. And we'll double check that in a second. And then whether or not it should give fear or not. So you can disable it and disable this way. True will enable the fear area to be active. False will disable it. We will actually set it to true here. And we'll close this out with a semicolon in the end. And if we go back to level editor, when we click on this fear area here, you can see that's fear_1. So now when we cross this plane here, this collide area here, we should enable that fear area to give fear. So now let's talk about the scary object. So let's go ahead and go back here. And we're going to go to the body here. And now let's go ahead and hit our areas here. And we're going to find our scary object. So we're going to go to the bottom here. And I think it's fear scary object here. And we're going to go ahead and drop the area right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on it. And I'm going to try and encompass the whole body here. Sometimes developers don't completely cover the body. They just get it in the general area. I'm just going to cover the whole body here. So if we look at the options here, what's pretty much going to happen is when the player looks at this area here, he's going to start getting additional fear applied to him. And if he gets closer or interacts with it, you can apply additional fear to the player. So here's the base fear rate. This is how much it will add. You can add a surprise factor, and again, you can hover over these values here just to see what they do. So when this object is first seen, you can add an additional amount of fear that will be added. When it's looked at, you can see how much you can change how much is added by looking at it, and pretty much a lot of stuff here. So -1 again implies the defaults are going to be used, the global defaults. We're pretty much going to leave a majority of these like this. There's an activation delay here as well. You can change again. Check these all out, hover over them, and check out what they all do. The important one we want here is the scary object activation light level. So if you want this area to only be activated once there's a certain amount of light shining around the area, then you have to change this. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to -1, which pretty much tells the game ignore what the light level is and just have this scary object work regardless. So that's exactly what we want. So you can also change the distance here and the deactivation distance here. I'm going to leave the defaults, but if you wanted to have it affect the player from a longer range, you can go ahead and mess with these 2 values here. And again, if you want to add even more fear when the object is interacted with, the player enters that area, you can also change that to make it increase higher. And there's callbacks as well that you can use, but we're not going to use any of these in these episodes. We're just going to strictly talk about the area itself. So with that, pretty much, believe it or not, we're already done. As long as this scary fear object is within this fear area, this should work. Again, a majority of these fear related things have to be within this fear area to have any effect on the player. So since this area is within this fear area here, we should have an effect. I will actually lift up off the ground a little bit here just to make sure that we are actually in the area here. So it should only be the player that's in it, not the actual area. But just to be safe, let me make sure that's up in there. And now let's go ahead and launch up our game and see if our area works now. So let's go ahead and hit F7 to launch our game. Alright guys, so here we are back in our level. Let's go ahead and head over there now and check it out. Alright, so we should have no fear applied here since the area is disabled. Of course, when we cross this barrier, we're going to have fear enabled here. So let's go ahead and cross it. So as you can see now, the fear in the area is enabled. So let's go ahead and get a close look at the body now. So let's go ahead and get close, look at it. And you can see now our fear rate just shoots up. Since the first look was enabled to the default, we did have a higher value. We look away now, you can see our fear rate goes down. We look at it again, our fear rate goes up. I don't think we have anything. I think the defaults for interaction are 0, so nothing's added when we interact with it. But as you can see, every time we look away and look back, our fear goes up and our screen gets even more intense. So that pretty much lets you have scary objects. You know, you got dead bodies, you got like a bunch of blood, you got pretty much anything that could scare the player. You can add this fear to it and make it so that the player gets fear applied when he looks at the object. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much just a very basic, slowish introduction to fear. It will get you guys started on applying it to your levels. And probably not next episode, but in some episode in the future, we'll probably talk a little bit more in depth about fear. Have a few more parts, so this will probably just be part 1. All the functions, of course, are listed in the description below. And again, I apologize for missing the upload last week. Again, it was the recording was messed up, and I didn't have the footage to be able to upload, so I had to re-record it, and I didn't have the time this weekend, so I ended up recording it after the weekend was over. So this is gonna be uploaded for Monday's episode. I'm gonna try and get a bonus episode up during the week, so you guys have an extra episode this week. But with that, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. If you guys aren't already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Leave comments and suggestions on what you want to see in future episodes, and don't forget to leave a like on the video before you guys go on to your custom stories and start implementing fear. All right, so have a good one, guys. Bye.